Hello everyone, my name is T. Hunter. If this is your first time coming to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back and thank you so much for coming back. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I decided that after this glorious season 12 of Married at First Sight that I would do a therapist's reaction to Chris. Now, the reason why I'm choosing to only react to Chris is because, well, I'm not going to be reacting like a typical viewer. For those of you who do not know, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. And instead of just reacting for the sake of entertainment, I was following along this season and thinking to myself, man, like, there's a lot going on for this young man. And I would want to know what it would be like to sit in a therapy session with him. So if you see me looking off to the side, I do have some notes here. I was asking myself, as far as the clinical approach is concerned, if Chris were my client, how would I respond to him? So let's get started. I want to say one of the first things that jumped out at me was one of Chris's quotes when he was actually waiting for his wife, Paige, to come down the aisle for them to then meet. And for those who do not know, Married at First Sight is literal. You meet and you marry your spouse on the same day. So as he's waiting for her, he admits that he is nervous about her appearance. He said that the initial attraction is very important to him, that he would need to feel attracted to her right off the bat. And he said if he was not attracted to her as soon as he saw her walking down the aisle, he was not sure what he would do. So that being said, that would definitely be one of the presenting issues that I would want to tackle in therapy. So as the season goes on, so many bombs were dropped. There was the admission the day after the wedding. Chris told his wife that he did not find her attractive, and he tried to connect with her on a physical level to see if physical intimacy would spark a physical attraction for her. And when it did not work, he then had a panic attack. So that had to be devastating for his wife to hear. Like, oh, okay, the man that is supposed to cherish me, honor me, and we're supposed to be together for the rest of our lives, we're taking these vows, doesn't find me attractive. And because attraction is so important to him, now we're already on the rocks and we're not even 24 hours in yet. So after the bomb around attraction, then there was the revelation that his ex-fiance was pregnant with his child. So, like I said, just bomb after bomb after bomb he was dropping. And one pattern that I noticed with Chris, oftentimes when he would deliver these very difficult statements, he would say, I'm just being honest, I'm just being honest. So honesty would definitely be something that I would want to explore. In the beginning, when it comes to therapy, there is an assessment period. And based on what I saw this season with Chris, I would say the background or the problems that I'm at least seeing would be difficulty accepting responsibility, challenges with being held accountable, especially by other men, commitment, or at least there's a difficulty with honoring the commitment as far as the marriage vows were concerned, when things were either not easy or they were not going his way. And lastly, him being brutally honest to the point that he would not spare, or at least did not seem to spare other people's feelings. So, some of the initial assessment questions that I would ask to get a better understanding of where Chris was coming from would be as follows. Number one, why is physical attraction so important to you? Number two, there's a big thing about honesty. So what have you learned about honesty? Be it from your family, from your relationships with your friends, work colleagues, and even in the church setting, because that was another thing. Chris mentioned that he was a God-fearing man, or at least that was mentioned in his vows. And then from time to time, he would mention God and he would mention his faith during the season. Okay, number three, how do you view yourself? And number 4, what goals would you like to achieve by the end of treatment? So, as far as the questions are concerned, the reason why I would ask, how did Chris view himself, is because I was noticing the trend around his attraction or lack thereof to his wife. He would continually mention not being attracted to her. And before he met her, he continually mentioned, okay, like my wife has to be fine, she has to be fine, she has to be fine. If she's not, I don't know what I'm going to do. And that almost insinuated that he may not be 100% sold out as far as staying in the marriage and being committed to a woman that he did not find attractive. So a lot of the times I notice that when someone else has a really difficult time with tearing other people down, it's because there's something going on within them that makes it hard for them to accept themselves, to see themselves as beautiful, to see themselves as worthy, to see themselves as deserving of good treatment. So if you're already at level 0, then you're going to have to take someone else down, God knows however many notches, so that you can feel better about yourself if you're battling with your own insecurities. So, and that goes back to the question around why is physical attraction so important? Who knows? Maybe Chris could have been the target of ridicule and shaming and teasing for his looks when he was growing up. And perhaps by getting an attractive wife, he might be able to redeem himself. I don't know. That's just a guess. But who knows? That could be true. And the question around honesty, the reason why I would ask, like, where did you learn about honesty, or who did you learn about honesty from, is because with Chris, it was really difficult to see him be honest, because it wasn't necessarily a moment of vulnerability. It was more so, I'm going to deliver these really hard truths. I'm not going to tread lightly, and I'm not going to do it in such a way where the honesty is also delivered with compassion and grace. I'm just going to say whatever needs to be said. And if you have an issue with what I said, I can just say, well, I'm just being honest. And you can't fault me for that because honesty's good. Well, honesty without grace, honesty without compassion, honesty without consideration of someone else's feelings can actually rip away at the fabric of your relationship. After asking Chris assessment questions to get a better understanding of who he is and where he's coming from and whatever insight he can give around his behavior, I would then explore therapy orientations, or more so different theories that I would use with him in therapy. And after watching Chris, especially his conflict resolution skills, his difficulty with people holding him accountable and challenging him to be responsible in the way that he treated his wife, as well as other situations, I would say that there are 2 theories in particular that stand out to me that I would love to use either in a session with him or someone that presents like him. So the first one would be cognitive behavioral therapy. So I know that might sound a little bit complicated, but basically what it means is cognitive will be your brain, and then of course your behavior would be your actions. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, there is a connection between your thoughts, your mood, as well as your behaviors or your reactions. So the best way to sum cognitive behavioral therapy up is that change is not seen until dysfunctional thought patterns are dismantled. Going back to the questions, there's one intervention for cognitive behavioral therapy that I think could be helpful. So it's called the downward arrow. And this intervention helps to identify underlying assumptions. So basically the question would be, if this is true, what does it say about you in your life? So going back to the big blaring concept of attraction, I would want to ask Chris, okay, so if you have an attractive wife, what does that say about you, and what does that say about your life? Because you're saying attraction is very important to you. You have to have that initial attraction. So what does it say about you in your life if you have a wife that you deem to be attractive? Another way that I might use the downward arrow to uncover underlying assumptions would be around honesty as well. Like asking, okay, if you are seen to be an honest person, or if people would classify you as dishonest, what would that say about you in your life? Because he would continually state, I'm just being honest, I'm just being honest, when he would deliver really hard truths and do it in a manner that wasn't so caring, it wasn't so gentle. Lastly, I think another question that I would use with the downward arrow approach might center around, culture. So, okay, you are a young Black man, you've never been married before, you at one point were a minister, but now you are a owner of a restaurant, you are into finances, you're doing pretty well for yourself. So let's just, make the assumption that everything that you're doing would make you a successful man. So if you are not successful in marriage, what would that say about you in your life? Sometimes we can get so caught up in being successful in maybe like 2 or 3 areas of our life that the idea of succeeding in every arena can escape us. And so I would be curious. All right, we've come to the end of the season. Your wife has said that she does not want to stay together. So if divorce is considered failure and you're getting a divorce, what does that say about you in your life? So in other words, what would motivate you to try to hold on, even if at the very beginning you weren't so sure and maybe you weren't all in? Okay, so that would be cognitive behavioral therapy. Doing my best to support Chris with understanding there is a connection between your thoughts, your mood, and your behaviors. And this doesn't just apply to Chris, this applies to all of us. If we are having negative thoughts, that can definitely trigger negative self-talk. That's ultimately going to affect your mood, and it definitely will affect your behavior and how you interact with people. So it's always something to consider. Your thoughts, your mood, and your behaviors, they are all intertwined. They're all affected by each other. Okay, so moving on to the next therapy modality that I see as interesting and definitely relevant as a believer myself. Narrative therapy. For me, the gist of narrative therapy is rewriting the narrative or the story around the problem. Oftentimes, the problem would be the reason why someone is coming to therapy. So in Chris's case, there were so many potential problems that could land him in a therapy setting. But I think what can be so discouraging at times when it comes to seeking help with mental health challenges is a person's diagnosis should just be that, their diagnosis. This is whatever the problem is that you're going to work with the client to identify and collaborate with them on to help them go from, maybe they're being controlled by the diagnosis to them having control and living their life in spite of having that diagnosis. So what I love about narrative therapy is it makes a very conscious effort and an emphasis on externalizing the problem from the person's identity. So oftentimes you might hear people say, oh, I'm anxious, or I'm depressed, I am addicted to this, whatever the case may be. What narrative therapy does is it says, no, you are Chris and you struggle with anxiety, or you are Chris and you struggle with depression. You are Chris and you struggle with whatever. So instead of the problem and the person are one, narrative therapy works towards separating the two. So I believe there's definitely liberation and freedom in that. And, it just reminds me of what Christ does for us when we accept him as our Savior. Those of us, who are believers, when we chose to accept Christ as our Savior, we got a new name, and now we get to author a new story. And of course, Jesus is the author and the finisher of our faith. So we never have to go through life alone. It's not that we're never going to face any challenges. We just don't have to face them by ourselves. And most importantly, whatever identity you had before you came to Christ, all of that is now covered under the blood. And I feel like there's a really strong connection with narrative therapy. So coming to therapy, you might be described as a person who has a mental health challenge that is leading them and controlling them. And by the time you leave from therapy, the goal with narrative therapy would be that you can now see yourself as someone who may have these challenges, but the challenges are not in the driver's seat. You are. Okay, so interventions that I would use in the narrative therapy lens would be, first and foremost, with narrative therapy, you want to identify the story around the problem. So how do you speak about the problem, Chris? How have people spoken about the problem and you? Like, have they intertwined your identity with the problem? So is it, oh, you struggle with commitment, you have a fear of marriage. Oh, so you're you're a person who is like afraid of commitment and it's just never going to change for you. Or it could be, you know, when it comes to attraction, like if this man is not attracted to this woman, as far as Chris is concerned, this is just not going to work out. So experts, you're wasting your time. Friends and family, if you're trying to hook them up with somebody, you're wasting your time because he is not going to give someone a chance if that packaging isn't right. So let's just, identify whatever that problem is. If he would say, okay, the problem is me being brutally honest, like I don't spare people's feelings, then okay, that would be the story. You're brutally honest, you don't know how to deliver hard truths with compassion, and as a result, you come off looking really cruel. So once that problematic story or the story around the problem has been identified, then we can start working towards dismantling that story and rewriting a new one. So one of the next interventions that I deem to be very helpful is identifying unique outcomes. So oftentimes a person who comes in, they come for therapy, they identify the problems, they identify their symptoms, and they identify whatever that diagnosis is going to be. Then I would have the opportunity to say, okay, has there ever been a time when anxiety did not win? Or if you would normally pop off on people when you're anxious, or if you would normally shut people out when you're depressed, or if you would normally be cruel and not very conscious of your words and not careful of how your words would impact other people when you were triggered. Can you tell me a time when you got triggered but you weren't cruel? Can you identify a time when you were depressed but maybe you did not shut people out? Or can you identify a time that you felt anxious and you noticed yourself getting ready to get on the roller coaster of anxiety where maybe you're going to start popping off on people, but you were able to pause, take a deep breath, or reword whatever you were going to say? Are there times where the diagnosis did not get in the driver's seat and you were able to do something different from what you normally would? So by identifying those unique outcomes and those unique events, this gives the client an opportunity to see, okay, no, I'm not just a depressed person. I'm not just anxious, or I'm not just cruel when I'm triggered. There have been times when I wasn't cruel. There are times when I don't isolate. There are times when I don't pop off. There are times that I am very thoughtful in the way that I treat other people. And so my job as a therapist would be to collaborate with them on finding those unique outcomes and then helping them factor that into their new story. Okay, so another question that I would want to ask around Chris's story would be very deeply rooted in social constructs. I would ask him, what does it mean for you to be a Black male, you're raised in a Christian church, and you're struggling to commit to your wife for whatever reason? Let's just say, let's throw away the attraction cards. Let's throw away anything else. Like, for whatever reason, you're struggling to commit to your wife. Like, what does that mean for you as a Black male who was raised in the Christian church, and you also get the difficult news that you're going to be a father to someone else's child outside of your marriage? What does that mean for you? Like, how does your story change? And with mental health challenges like anxiety, as he expressed in the beginning, he mentioned that he had a panic attack. I would want to know, okay, being a Black male who struggles with anxiety, what is the story that you're telling yourself around your ability to be a husband to one wife while co-parenting with your ex-fiance? Like, that's got to be a heavy reality to try to embrace. I am in no way, shape, or form excusing the behavior that I saw this season with Chris, but as a therapist, you have to explore the context. You have to see the bigger picture. It does not mean you excuse the behavior simply because you're able to validate how difficult it might be to be in a position that maybe you never thought you'd be in. It's so much better to explore that context with the client instead of, okay, I'm just going to excuse this behavior because they have this diagnosis, or I'm just going to excuse this behavior because they're my client and I don't want them to think that I'm biased. Well, that's what supervision is definitely for. Because therapists, we get countertransference. Just like so many viewers all over the world probably felt some type of way, and you can insert whatever word you want in the comments, after watching this season and watching how Chris interacted not only with his wife, but also with his family and, with his former spiritual advisor, spiritual mentor, Pastor Dwight. We all have some feelings and probably some questions, and maybe some of us even have some comments, definitely have commentary around that. But instead of focusing so heavily on you're terrible, you're terrible, you're terrible, therapy gives the opportunity to say, okay, perhaps you have behaved terribly, but there have to be times when you have not. There's always going to be some event that could be a saving grace. It could be a pivotal moment where you can decide, hey, maybe I made that trash decision, but I don't have to be trash for the rest of my life. So that pretty much concludes my reactions to Chris for this season. This video could be an hour long, but I'm not going to do that because, there are other commentary shows and reaction shows to Married at First Sight, such as The Bald and the Beautiful. Make sure you check that one out. The hosts are Melissa Fredericks, Kevin Fredericks, Angel Tanksley, and Marcus Tanksley. And you can find them on Melissa's channel, Mrs. Kev on Stage. And they're doing an awesome job reviewing. This has only been their second season reviewing, and I come back for more every week. So I'm interested to see what they will come up with for future seasons. Okay, now before I conclude, I do want to just take a moment to acknowledge, the feelings that any person, male, female, any race, religion, whatever, may have around feeling less than or being made to feel less than. So this is for you. For every person who has ever been made to feel like something was wrong with you because maybe you didn't look a certain way, you didn't come from a certain family, perhaps you didn't have a certain amount of money, or you didn't work at a certain job. For whatever reason, you were made to feel like you were inferior. That is a lie. God is very intentional. He did not make a mistake, and he did not slip up when he decided to create you. So whoever you are watching this, you are not a mistake. It is not a mistake that you're watching this video right now. I believe that this was definitely orchestrated. So it was intended for you to watch this. So for those who may struggle with, insecurities around your appearance, you may struggle with insecurities around your family background. You might even feel insecure around your socioeconomic status. Let today be a pivotal moment. Whoever may have rejected you as a result of those things that make you who you are, let them go. Because God definitely has the people that he wants you to have that will accept you for who you are, flaws and all. They'll be able to hold you accountable, but they'll also be able to celebrate your victories with you. And they're not going to be trying to chip and chisel away at the person that you are simply because you don't fit into this mold of, well, you got to be this way if you're going to be attracted to me, or you got to do this if you're going to be successful in my eyes. It's time out for all that. Life is too short to live in such a way that you lose who you are, whether it be in a dating process, in a marriage, in the pursuit of a career, or in the pursuit of your own happiness and your mental health and your emotional stability. So, rejection is a form of protection. It may hurt. Absolutely, it will. But God understands every hurt that we go through, and He's there to catch each and every tear, and He's there to pick us up each and every time that we fall. Be encouraged. The right people are out there for you. Friends, family, work opportunities. It's all out there. So keep pushing. Don't ever let rejection be the end of the road for you. So, I'm sure you already know what's coming. If you have enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a future post. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.